Well, we are back with another episode of Deals A to Z, and in this series of episodes, we are discussing seller financing, and we have none other than the king himself, Jeff Rappaport, who is our special guest, and the other host, Jeff Braylio.
Everyone.
So both Jeffs, thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
Might get a little confusing who we're talking to.
Yes. Jeff Rappaport, if you don't mind, you've got a very successful podcast. Would love to give it the listeners, information on it so that if they want to hear more from you, they can. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your podcast?
Sure. We started a little over 2 years ago. Now we have over 100 episodes. And it's really the journey of another fellow investor, his journey in learning how to use creative financing in his real estate business. So it's a little different than your normal podcast, and it's more how-to rather than rah-rah kind of, more like your guys' podcast where it's more how-to. And it's been great. And I would tell you, if you're just starting out and you're not understanding creative financing at all, start at the beginning. We'll go through some different strategies and why you would use one over another and advantages, disadvantages, that kind of thing.
Very cool. What's it?
I was honored to actually be on one of the shows. It's a fantastic.
You've been on twice, Jeff.
Twice, that's right.
You're the only person that I've had on twice.
There you go. and I've listened to it. It is one of the best podcasts I have heard on creative financing, and seller financing is one variation of creative financing. It is a huge topic, and it's one of the most important topics in real estate investing because it's really going to open up your world.
Yeah.
A lot more kinds of transactions, a lot more deals, rather than just trying to find hard money to do a fix and flip.
And right now is like the opportune time
for seller financing deals for the next year or two. That's right. How can people find your podcast?
It's called the Creative Financing Podcast.com. That's our website. And it's on iTunes and Stitcher and Podbean, all the various ways that you can listen to a podcast.
Perfect.
Very cool. How often do you come out with an episode?
Every Monday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Wonderful. Excellent. Well, if we can dive into a deal on to share with the listeners, you've prepared. We just discussed. You've got a couple opportunities that we could talk about. I'll let you pick, Jeff, which one you want to talk about. If you don't mind starting off with a little bit how you found it, so we can share that part.
So this one's probably a little more advanced, but it's so cool, and I think your listeners will really like it. We found it. It was a for rent, and we called on the for rents, and really all we ask is, "Hi, we saw your for rent. Would you be open to selling?" And this particular individual said yes. He had owned it for back when the Olympics were here, so he's owned it a long time.
2002.
The property is in a primo area, and one of the bathrooms, it was very dated, and one of the bathrooms he had ripped out, he had gutted, and he had all the materials there, but he hadn't finished the job. And he was looking for, he's an investor, obviously. He knows he's a more sophisticated investor. And we told him, hey, we can do a number of things for you. One, we could just pay you out, and this would be our cash price. Or we could get a little more creative and pay you in installments over some time, and you will, one, get a much higher price, and two, that you'll make some money on your equity. The property was free and clear, and he said, actually, that's kind of perfect because I was either going to 1031 exchange into another property, so he could avoid paying his long-term capital gains taxes, which are going to be significant, or he could at least spread them out through owner financing, where he's only paying on the money that he's receiving rather than a big lump sum. So we put together some offers. This is a little higher priced property. He told us that he thought he wanted $400,000 as is. And so we offered him $415,000 and offered $21,000 as a down payment. Here's where it gets a little interesting. Over the years, I've figured out a way to kind of offer interest, but still gain a very rapid principal pay down. And so I won't explain that a whole lot. I think that'll just confuse people. But the interest rate is 2.5%. The monthly payment is $2,000 a month. Out of that $2,000, about $1,200 goes toward principal from day one. So and we gave him a 3-year term. So we're going to get some really rapid pay down on that principal purchase price. That's why we're able to offer more, because it's going to pay down so quickly.
Got it.
Okay, so
key term: how fast will that seller financing pay down versus how much you're willing to pay?
I'm sorry, say that question one more time.
The price you're willing to pay is determined in part by how fast the seller financing note is being paid down.
Correct. Yeah.
You're able to get into homes at a higher price and still make the deal worth it.
Exactly. So that's part of why owner financing is so attractive, because we can pay a much higher price for a property, maybe even close to retail, and sometimes even more than retail, depending on what the rest of the terms are. Purchase price, in my opinion, is like the least important aspect of owner financing. All the rest of the terms are far more important.
Absolutely.
So what happened here is that we didn't have a lot of negotiations. He liked that offer. That made a lot of sense to him. We made him several offers, and he basically just chose which one would best fit for him. And so he took it. And even at 2.5%, he's still making money. He's gaining interest on some of the money that he's basically financing us. Mm-hmm. What my goal was that I was going to then just turn right around. We were probably going to fix the bathroom, maybe do some paint, very, very minor cosmetic repairs. I'm not really a rehabber. And then we were going to go sell it to an owner occupant on terms. And those terms would be higher price, higher down payment, higher interest rate, higher everything. We would collect the money up front, the difference in down payments. We'd make money each month in the difference in cash flow. And then we'd get paid a third time at the end when they go and refinance the property. The property took a little twist because I had a partner at the time, and he had just rehabbed a couple of pretty minor houses, and he was digging it. He liked doing it, and he convinced me somehow that we were going to rehab this house. And I told him, "This is your project then. That you spend the time, you work with the contractors, and you get this done." Well, this property was only 2,600 square feet, and it took him 6 months. I thought a budget of $80,000 would be plenty. He spent $160,000.
Oh.
And now we were kind of forced to try to sell it retail, and we got lucky because he did do a good job. It just he better have, right? For paying that kind of money. I mean, the house came out really well done, and it sold pretty quickly for pretty close to what we were asking. Obviously, we had spent more money than we wanted, and still made a nice profit, but wasn't anywhere near what I thought we should have made. So we were now done, right? That we found a buyer who was getting a loan and going to cash everything out. So the seller was now going to be paid in full. And the seller didn't want that. So anytime that I have a note that we're about to pay off early, we're going to go back and do one of two things. One is we're going to ask for a discount. So, hey, we owe you $389,000. If we were to come into some money here quickly and get you paid in full, would you be willing to take, 368 or something like that? See what kind of discount we could get for payoff early. We decided not to go that route because I don't think that he would have taken a discount. What he really wants is to prolong his tax burden. So we said, look, we can get this cashed out now, and rather than pay you off and you have to go and pay all your taxes, why don't we do what's called substitution of collateral? And what that means is that the proceeds of the note at that particular time go into an escrow account, and we have use of that money. We continue to pay him the terms on the note, so $2,000 a month at 2.5% interest for the next 2.5 years. But we're able to use that money on other properties as long as we give him at least as much equity as he had in his own house. Well, when we bought it, we paid $415, and he was financing $394. He was at 93, 94, 95% loan to value. Pretty easy to make sure that he's at least as protected on another property than he was on this one, right? So we've now, it's been another year, and we've developed a relationship now because we've used his money numerous times on various other projects. But now he'll lend in second position. He'll let us break it up into smaller amounts. And what we do is we pay him a little bit more. So I took use of this money and I bought a property where I had to put down $32,000, and then I had a $15,000 rehab. So I borrowed $50,000 from him. And I said, I'll pay you another 5% on your 50. And, I only needed it for 90 days. So that's not very expensive money. And I pay that outside of closing. And then when this deal closes, whatever part of the note that I borrowed goes back into the escrow account. And we just keep going back and forth. So probably what will happen at the end of year 3 is one of two things. He'll either want to extend and say, let's keep going, or he'll take his money, pay his taxes, but will come back to us and say, hey, how about, we continue this relationship and I'll be your private lender. So anytime that you're looking for hard money, I love substitution of collateral, because promise you're not getting, use of almost $400,000 for $2,000 a month, which, by the way, $1,200 is going back in our pocket, right? Every payment that we pay him, $1,200 is coming back to us down the road.
Yeah, and I'm going to recap that because that is so unbelievably brilliant. I want to make sure that listeners really do get exactly what you just did there. You found a deal, owner owned it free and clear, sold it to you on seller. So you had a note and deed. Seller finance becomes the bank, and then you go to sell the property. And instead of paying back your seller lender, you just keep making payments to him and collateralize his loan on another project.
Correct.
Because you got a loan at 2.5%, cheap, almost free money.
Almost free.
Yeah. So why pay it back? He wants it long term. He's liking the interest. Like he's liking that extra interest payment and spreading out his tax burden.
Yep.
So he's totally fine keeping the payments going, but you got that property sold. You can do what is called the substitution of collateral and just move the loan and secure it on another property. And just keep that one. And now you've got a 2.5% slush fund to be a real estate investor with.
Well, and it's interesting, but we did another one. I did another one. This was no longer with my partner, that I agreed to buy a townhome, and I was paying basically top dollar, like $206,000. It's probably worth $210,000, but it still needed some work. It wasn't in pristine condition. And same kind of terms. I think I offered him like $7,000 down, 2.5% interest, $600 a month. Now, unfortunately, when your payment is that low, that you don't have a lot of money that's going to go toward principal. I mean, how much can really go toward principal, right? I mean, even if $300 a month's going toward principal, it's not paying down that dramatically. That's a 4-year term. And when we discussed this, the seller said, I absolutely do not want to be paid out early. And I said, okay, the way that we can do that is substitution of collateral, where you allow me to, if I sell this property, that we're going to move your trust deed and note to another property and use it in another way. He agreed. I put this property on the market thinking I'm going to sell it on terms and, buy it on terms, sell it on higher terms. The first buyer came to me within 48 hours and said, I can get a loan and my interest rate's way lower than your interest rate. So I had a choice, and the choice was, do I just sell this property outright, right, within 2 days and have use of this money for the next 4 years, or do I tell this buyer, go away, I'm not selling it this way, I'm going to wait for my terms buyer? So I sold it, and that put another $194,000 in that slush fund, Jeff. So same terms.
That's awesome.
That is brilliant. So when let's go back to the first investor. He was a little bit seasoned. Did he already understand substitution of collateral? Did you just
no.
Okay.
Not many people are going to understand it. It's probably a very underutilized strategy.
Very.
But makes perfect sense. And I've got a title company that holds those funds, and it's not a free for all, right? I don't have use of that money. I can't go to the Bahamas and go buy a new Rolls Royce or whatever. It's not my money. That money is to be used, and when I find a new property, I just let him know, and I say, hey, this is the plan. This is what we're going to do. And he's like, we're to the point now that we've done enough projects. He's like, give me the address, show me some comps, tell me what you're going to do. And then he signs off. And he signs off with the title company. Right. The title company then creates a new, I don't even know if it's a new note. It's probably a reference to the previous note.
Reference to the note, yep.
Yep.
A new trustee.
Yeah. And then they secure it against that property, and
it's usually reinsured, so they're still getting the same title lender's insurance policy.
Correct.
Right? There's a bit of a transaction cost to you, but good grief, so worth it.
Oh yeah. I haven't borrowed hard money in 10 years, and
hey, you're going to put us out of business.
I'm not opposed to borrowing hard money, but if I don't need to, I'd much rather not. And I've borrowed my share of hard money in the past, for sure.
Yes, we like our 2 and 12.
I know you do.
I'm not giving you 2.5%. Sorry, love you, but no, you're not getting 2.5% from me.
You mean we can't go to lunch, Jeff, and negotiate a little bit?
Yeah. For you, maybe 10%. So I'm assuming you told this seller lender up front that you might be doing this, and your documents were written to allow you to do the substitution of collateral. So is this something you thought about in advance?
The first one, no, I didn't. And that just turned out to be that, hey, we're going to pay you off early. Let's have this discussion now. The second one, yes, it was planned ahead of time. Good. And it's funny, I have more problems with the second one than the first one. And we talked it all out in advance. He's a super nice guy, and he's very workable, but he has a certain thought process in his mind, and it's not correct. And so every time that we move this property, this money around, we've got to go through this whole thing. And the title company's been really good at helping me explain to him what actually is happening here.
Yeah, and it does require good documents and a good title company that understands this. Not all do. And it comes down to making these sellers comfortable with particularly their security.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And
and you've good grief, you had a 95% LTV on the first. That's easy to keep.
And I basically said, don't worry, I'll protect you even more than you were on your first property. And if I'm borrowing 95% or more, I better have a really good idea of what's going to happen there.
Yeah, good.
So Jeff, if going back to the first deal, just curious, you guys spent double on the renovation. Was the sale still profitable?
Yeah. So
can we go over those numbers a little bit?
Yeah. So we bought the property for so we bought it for $415,000.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the rehab cost came to about $160,000. So we're into it for $565,000 plus some holding costs. We ended up selling it for I think we started at $750,000. I think we ended up getting like $730,000, $725,000.
Great.
But we had to pay some real estate commissions. My partner was a realtor, so we only had to pay half.
Nice.
So yeah, we made some money. It all worked out. Not anywhere near what I thought would happen, but
more because of the seller financing.
Yeah, well, yeah, that was the icing.
You on that.
So my partner and I have split, so we share this, right? So I use it, he uses it for his business, and I would tell you that we've both made significant amounts of money from the use of this money.
If this is more of just a curious question, at that price point, I was just curious, what city is that was that house in?
It was in Sugar House in Salt Lake. So, like I said, super good area. Probably more east Sugar House. And it wasn't that big of a house. I mean, like 2,600 square feet, and you're getting in the sevens. It better be in a really good area, right?
300 square foot.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the rehab came out so good. Part of the problem is that my partner wasn't necessarily keeping an eye on the contractors every day, which is hard to believe because he was there so much. And we had to fire one contractor and redo most of the stuff that he had done because it wasn't very good. But the kitchen came out unbelievable. However, there was no space for a dining room table. And I was so concerned that would hurt our resale value. You basically, when you eat in this house, you're eating at the counter, and which was beautiful. Yeah. But, that's a little bit of an issue, and wasn't maybe planned out right up front. And then the other issue was
uncommon, though, in that area. That's not uncommon in that area. I've done flips in that area, and very tiny kitchens, if at all.
Yeah. So the kitchen was open now, because he moved walls and he did all kinds of stuff. But the other thing is that if you wanted, they had more of a front patio, front/side kind of fenced patio, and you could walk into the house, but you walked into the master bedroom. And so it's like, I guess it's good if it's just, two of you that live there, but kids are living there and they bring over their friends. Maybe not the best, but it came out good enough that it sold pretty quick, and which I was a little concerned about, but it went well.
Good. Hey, after doing 100 episodes of a creative financing podcast, what are your 3 tips for a new investor, or maybe even an experienced investor who's just never done a seller financing transaction before? They do the hard money or just conventional financing. 3 tips for an investor to get into seller financing or understanding seller financing.
Well, I would say first and foremost is you're not going to be an expert right up front, right? So just learn at least some technique, some strategy, and try to implement it. Try to start using it. And just like anything else in real estate, the more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you will get at it. And I think people see it as being this overwhelming thing. People think I'm a mathematician. I am not a mathematician. I know how to use a financial calculator, like 5 buttons. I've just done this so much, so often that I know how the different pieces may fit together, and I have a direction. I'm trying to accomplish something, so I have a plan. Now I'm just trying to see if I can make the numbers work within my plan. So the more that you do it, the better you will get at it. And instead of trying to learn it all at once, take a strategy, whether it's lease option or subject to or something, and learn it and be semi comfortable with it. You don't have to be able to answer every question that may come up about it. You may not know exactly if you're structuring things right. I'd say too, find someone that does know, that could either help mentor you or at least look over some of your offers and say, yeah, I think you're missing the point here, because you can't just throw numbers out, right? There's got to be a purpose for them. And I see wholesale deals that are set up as creative financing, and I can tell that they're trying, but it doesn't make sense to me where the down payment's $100,000 on a $260,000 home, but you get to take over the existing debt for the rest of the life of the loan. I'm like, part of creative financing is to make it so you're not putting down as much money.
That was last week.
You are correct.
I saw that.
I see these all the time, and it's like, you're missing the point of what you're trying to accomplish. And I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, but
that's almost 30 or 40% down. Where in financing, it's only 20.
Exactly. It's like, let's not defeat the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. And so understanding how some numbers kind of fit together will really help you go a long way. And understand what, get a relationship with a title company or attorney. And because there's certain things, Jeff, we've had this conversation. We had it on my own podcast about, you like certain things, you don't like other things. And title companies and attorneys are like that all throughout the country.
Like doctors, we all have an opinion.
Exactly. And so get with the person that understands what you're trying to do. Make sure that they get it. And that so when it comes time that you have a deal, that they got your back, they got you supported.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Jeff Rappaport, who do you study then?
Wow, I have studied a lot, and I continue to study quite a bit. I just took a 3-day class last week because I have some new ideas of where I want to take my business. But I started with Ron LeGrand, and he's been around for 30 plus years, and he's the one, to this day, I was just listening to him today, actually, that he divides real estate into 2 groups, the ugly house business and the pretty house business. And pretty houses is terms. And when I first started, I went on a boot camp to one of his seminars in Indianapolis, and we were looking at houses that were $30,000, $20,000. We'd walk through them as 40 people would get out of this bus, and we'd get back on, and we'd say, all right, what are we going to offer? $17,000, $8,000, $28,000. And so I came back to Utah, and I'm like, where are the $28,000 homes? I don't know where they are. And
right.
So I didn't get the ugly house business, and I'm like, I don't feel that comfortable walking through the house and just figuring out what the repair costs are, and I'm not very handy. So I chose the pretty house business right from the start, and that's how I started my business. Is I basically found properties that I could buy subject to the mortgage. Basically, sellers would deed them to me with existing financing in place, and then I agreed to make those payments on their behalf for a specified period of time, and then I would go lease option them out to another tenant buyer and hope that they would at some point get a new loan and cash me out. But meanwhile, I would get some money up front, and I would make some cash flow, and that's basically how I got started in my real estate business. But there are some good people out there that teach creative financing, and there's some that, I have my own opinions on how you do things. You may agree or disagree with me. I don't know everything by any means, but I feel like I'm confident enough to know how you should protect yourself, how you should protect your buyer, and how you should protect your seller. And some of the people out there that are teaching don't necessarily do that.
Good advice.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being on our show today. As always, it's great to see and hear from you, and it's always great to learn from you. Like, yeah, I certainly don't know everything myself, and part of the reason I do this is I continue to learn.
Well, it's so funny because I really view both of you. I mean, Yoshi, we were just in a mastermind together yesterday, talking about the state of the market and sharing, high level ideas. And I mean, Jeff, you're one of the very go-to people in our community, not just for me, but for many. And so the pleasure is really mine to be on. So thank you for having me.
Thanks.
That's very kind. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate you joining us today, because it's a special treat to always hear from you.
Perfect. Well, we will sign off and look for another episode of Deals A to Z, where we walk a deal from beginning to end to learn invaluable lessons from experienced real estate investors.
Absolutely. And Jeff Rappaport, I don't know if you want to be contacted, but if you did, how can people get in contact with you?
So people can certainly go to our website, thecreativefinancingpodcast.com. There's actually a hotline number on all our show notes. So if anyone wants, they have a deal, we might put it on the podcast. I'll call you back. I'll try to help you with it. We have an apprentice program. You can leave a message about finding out more information on that. Probably the best way.
Great. Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jeff Rappaport, for joining us. Thank you, Jeff Braylio, as well. And I hope everybody enjoyed this episode.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.